Welcome back to another completely useless video, or if you're new, welcome to 8 of the most useless minutes of your life. This is a part 2 to my all-time Australia ODI 11 video, so check that out if you haven't already. Link is in the description. Today, we're going to ask ourselves, but what about all the players that missed out on the first team? Luckily for them, we're going to make a B team. I can only imagine that this is the highest honour any of them have ever received. Sure, winning 2 World Cups is nice and all, but making Mr. Useless's all-time Australia ODI B team? That's some elite prestige. However, unluckily for you, it means you're going to have to listen to me drone on for longer than you thought. But where better to start with our second 11 than putting in the players who just missed out on the first team? So let's put in Hussey, probably at 5 or 6, and work out our openers. Mark Waugh, Matthew Hayden, and David Warner. As mentioned before, there's very little between them. If I had to pick the worst one, then I'd say Mark Waugh just misses out. However, he does give a right-handed option and some handy offspin. He's also played a bit as a 3, 4 or 5, so moving him out of the opening spot would be possible. As good as Head and Finch are, I don't think they come close to these guys. So once again, I'm going to be a coward and come back to this opening spot later. So, now our options for number 3 are Greg Chappell, Mark Waugh, and Steve Smith, all of whom can bat at 4, as can Martin, Lehman, Clark, and Steve Waugh. I don't think that Alan Border fits in anywhere. Given that we'll also probably have our keeper bat in the top 7, at least 2 of these guys need to be decent bowlers. Steve Waugh on batting alone likely doesn't make the team, but his more than useful bowling definitely gives him a chance. Greg Chappell and Mark Waugh are also helped by their bowling ability. Given that we'll probably stick with our formula of 3 frontline pacers and a main spinner, it makes sense that we pick 1 part-time spinner and 1 part-time seamer. So it makes sense to go with Mark Waugh and 1 of either Greg Chappell or Steve Waugh. While their bowling is quite comparable, Chappell's batting takes the cake for me. However, Steve Waugh can bat at 5 or 6, which has far less competition than 3 or 4 where Chappell bats. Now, given that I've been talking about my options and have gotten nowhere, I'm just going to go with my gut. Warner and Hayden opening, Greg Chappell at 3, Mark Waugh at 4, Mike Hussey at 5, and Darren Lehman at 6. Let me explain why. Warner, Hayden, and Hussey were all very close to getting into the first team, as was Mark Waugh, so it makes sense that these are our first choice for the second team. Greg Chappell's ODI record might not have the longevity, but it absolutely has the quality. It stands out even more when you consider his World Series cricket record. This does mean that Steve Smith, Michael Clarke, and Damien Martin all miss out, but I think Chappell is just as good, and I think Lehman offers more than Steve Waugh, and is far more suited to bat at 5 or 6. So now we can get our keeper in, all 4 of whom are suited for number 7, so this works out perfectly. Carey is probably the most sound bat out of these 4, but Haddin is right on his tail. Marsh and Healy weren't as good with the bat, but are far better with the gloves. Given that you don't need your best keeper in ODIs, I'm going to drop Healy. The only reason I'm keeping Marsh in the picture is because he's the quickest scorer. His strike rate is over a run a ball. Now, our top 6 has 4 lefties already, which is the only reason I'm hesitant to go with Carey. But having said that, 5 righties and 2 lefties is never seen as a problem, so why should 5 southpaws be? I'm going Carey. I think he's the most solid bat and is very capable both at the death and in the middle. But Haddin and even Rod Marsh would not be bad picks here. Now, on to the fast bowlers. I think the first name we can eliminate is Jeff Thomson. His ODI record just isn't that good. First pick though is another easy one, Brett Lee. Absolutely fantastic bowler, raw pace, and an excellent wicket taker. Almost as good as Stark. Speaking of Stark, I do like going with a left armour if possible, and both Johnson and Bracken are very good bowlers. Given that none of the other right armers are hugely better than these 2, I think we'll gain more having a left-hander in the lineup than a third marginally better righty. I honestly don't think there's much between them while bowling. If I had to pick one, I'd probably say Johnson is slightly better, and he is the better batter too, so Mitch Johnson feels like the right choice. which means we have to pick one between Gillespie, Cummins, Hazelwood, and McDermott. In ODIs, I think Gillespie and Cummins aren't as good bowlers as the other two, but both, especially Cummins, do provide batting. So I think we can say no Gillespie, not as good as Cummins with either bat or ball. So now we need to ask ourselves, how important is the batting skill of your number 8? And does Cummins provide enough with the bat over Lee or Johnson to justify picking him over one of the other two? I don't think so. I think Lee, Johnson, and Cummins are all equally capable of batting at 8, especially if one of them also bats at 9 too. So I think we can rule out Cummins. Bretley at 8 and Johnson at 9 isn't a bad tale, so we can purely look at the bowling for our final two options. So, the question comes down to Hazelwood versus McDermott. This is another really close battle. If it was in a vacuum, I think I'd just lean towards McDermott. It feels crazy to say, but Hazelwood, the second best bowler in the world right now, won't get a spot. But when your competition is McGrath, Lilly, Lee, and McDermott, it's always going to be tricky. However, having said all that, we're not picking players in a vacuum. We want what's best for the team. Lee and Johnson have a similar skill set to McDermott, which makes him a bit redundant, whereas Hazelwood offers something different, and is also very consistent, which is probably what you want when you've got Johnson and Lee alongside you. So I'm going Hazelwood. Finally, onto the spinner, and we don't have many options to consider. Between the two of them, I think Brad Hogg's the better bowler. So, Warner and Hayden, a very strong opening pair. Greg Chappell and Mark Waugh at 3 and 4. Not quite Ponting and Jones, but still more than capable of controlling the middle overs. Hussey at 5 and Lehman at 6. Both brilliant middle order bats, excellent towards the end of an innings, and Carey at 7 is a good keeper and a versatile batter, capable of staying in if necessary, but can also go hard too. Lee and Johnson have 3 and 2 50s respectively to their names, so certainly not slouches with the bat. Then Hazelwood and Hogg to wrap things up. Not quite as strong as the first team, but that's kind of the point of a second team. While the bowling might not quite be the same quality, it still has options. Left arm seam and Johnson, right arm with Lee and Hazelwood, some helpful medium pace with Greg Chappell. Brad Hogg bowls the rare left arm wrist spin, Mark Waugh some off spin, and even Lehman with some left arm orthodox. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, or if you didn't, hopefully you at least managed to kill a few minutes and think about cricket for a bit. Feel free to leave any thoughts of your own 11s in the comments, and you can subscribe if you never want to miss a useless video. Bye all.